Deven Choksey of KRChoksey joins us for some fundamental stock analysis. Hi, Deven. Good morning. Hoping for a good 2023. Wishing you and your team the best. Well, Deven, we've got banking updates that have come in, and a lot of them are looking quite good. What's your sense? IndusInd Bank, that's the last one that came out with its update late last evening. Did you have a look at that? And what's your pick?
Hi, Nigel. Good morning and wish you all happy 2023 as well. Well, I think the banking lending numbers, I think, are basically coming up in a higher direction. I think largely because of the fact that we are seeing higher amount of credit offtake, particularly from SME, MSME, as well as I think from the corporate sector. And as a result of which, I think most of the private corporate sector banks who have been, I think, clocking some of the good accounts have started reporting better than expected numbers. Earlier expectation was somewhere around 18% kind of a growth in the lending book. We are currently seeing, I think, 90 to 20 and 21% kind of a growth in the lending book for some of the lenders. And I would not be very surprised if this particular momentum continues. Largely because of a few facts. On one side, we already have the higher amount of, I think, economic activity happening, particularly due to the infrastructure-led spending which the government is doing, is resulting into higher amount of industrial product consumptions. And as a result of which, I think we are seeing the participation of large to mid and small size enterprises into this activity, which is basically resulting into a higher amount of credit offtake. On the other side, the retail credit offtake, I think, is also continuing to do well with the consumption increasing. And so is the situation with housing finance. So overall, I think it appears to be a sustained activity continuing as far as I think the growth in lending book is concerned, and which I would like to believe that I think would continue for a good longer period of time.
Okay, got that. Deven, good morning. We've also got good numbers from D-Mart. Now, always a pricey stock, but I mean, that's a solid 25% growth. How do you tackle that one?
Yes, Tata, good morning. Well, I think the retail story continues, and I think the grocery business particularly, I think, is increasing to higher amount of volume-led growth. As we understand from this business, the larger the kind of volume, probably I think a margin improvement also being seen. They have been systematically adding new stores, and as a result of which the new store-led growth, as well as I think from existing store, the higher amount of offtake I think has been witnessed. So that is another reason for which I think you are seeing the retailers like D-Mart, retailers like Reliance Retail continuing to report relatively stronger numbers. Yes, you are right. I think it is an expensive story, but at the same time, I think in this market, people would like to see the sustainable growth happening. And that's where I think probably they are buying the stories in D-Mart or even for the Reliance Retail. Who remain confident about it. Maybe I think the good time to buy in this kind of companies, I think where the valuations are expensive, is during the crash or a correction in the market whenever it happens.
Okay, got that. Deven, good morning. Do you like aviation stocks? I know there is this issue about, ATF prices, etc., and profitability. But now things are really improving, especially on the top line. Would you put money afresh in names like Interglobe?
Yes, Sonia, good morning. Well, I think we have always been mindful about the fact that this particular business is extremely volatile business. In a good season, probably I think you end up getting higher amount of revenue and the profit. And in not so good season, I think you are also getting impacted badly. So to a greater extent, I think for a long-term investment on a sustainable basis, this particular business is very unpredictable as I see it. However, at this point of time, I think given the kind of seat load factor that we are experiencing, in my viewpoint, I think this particular business is going to grow relatively better, especially because I think the crude oil prices and the fuel prices are remaining more or less stable. I think we should be seeing a continued better performance in next few quarters. As I said, I think predicting for a longer period, I think is a little difficult in this business, given the kind of vulnerability that we have with the data. But the fact is, I think at least next 2-3 quarters, it appears to be a relatively stronger period for aviation business in particular.
Okay. Yes, fair enough. Now this is a big question, but it's a big stock. But the story really is buying Socio. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that brand, but Back in the old days, Socio was a huge beverage in rural India in particular, bought by Reliance Consumer. Deven, overall view on the stock, I mean, they seem to have an insatiable appetite to buy brands.
Yeah, Lata, I think the very important part of retail business is that if you have your own brands, then probably I think you have relatively better margins to talk about. Otherwise, the retail business world over, one has experienced that I think the margins are always compressed, it is always under pressure, and always I think the smaller rate of margin get you on. However, I think the successful companies and the companies with a deep pocket like Reliance Retail would continue to buy some of the brands, I think, which they would be in a position to probably market it for better margin. I would not be very surprised if I think we see margin performance of Reliance Retail, which is currently hovering around 7% or so at the EBITDA level. I think reaching in the direction of around 8.5% going forward, given the kind of acquisitions that they have been doing in some of the consumer brands. So I think that's an area where I think one will keep an eye on, successfully adding the stores on the ground, creating the omni-channel kind of a presence through the digital platform, and at the same time, I think creating their own brand portfolio with multiple products. I think it's a success story that they are scripting. So definitely one remains positive and confident, especially with the size that they are creating at this point of time.